Okay, we'll start over then. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call the March 7th special meeting of the Arizona Board of Regents to order. And can you please confirm we have a quorum?
Yes, Chair Manson, we have a quorum.
Perfect, thank you. The public session of this board meeting is being live streamed on YouTube at ABOR News, and the link is available on the board's website under ABOR Live. Today, we'd like to better understand how the Russian invasion of Ukraine has impacted our universities and our students, and would like to make sure that the university resources are in no way benefiting Russia. So we have asked each of the presidents to assess their relationships with Russia and Ukraine and how this conflict is impacting them. I'm going to ask each of the presidents to comment and take questions from the board members. And then after their comments, we'll consider any instructions that we have for the presidents, including a proposal to divest university investments from Russian assets. And I'm going to begin with President Crow. The floor is yours. And you are also muted, President Crow. There you go.
It said 3 times I couldn't unmute myself, so so nonetheless it works. So thank you. So thank you. I'm beaming in from a hotel room in London where we have meetings today. Just landed here, been in meetings all day, and other things going on relative to some interesting things. I'll say one of them, which is a highly accelerated evolution of our irregular warfare center that we're evolving under the general aegis of the McCain initiatives that we have. And so we have meetings here with our partner, King's College London, and others. And so they're relevant to some of the things going on in Ukraine, in that the reshaping of all alliances and the invigoration of alliances and the strengthening of alliances, including academic alliances in defense-related areas, is accelerating. And so with regard to Russia and Ukraine specifically, I mean, obviously we see the invasion of the Ukraine as the the actions of a mad despot. And so we want to do as little as possible, if to help him in any possible way. So the extent of our interactions in Russia are limited to a now moving outside of ASU's sphere, an inherited office that we have, a contract office from the Thunderbird School of Global Management. We've initiated in the last week the elimination of our relationship with that office. That's underway and should be completed shortly. And then in addition to that, the only other significant interaction we have on the Russian side of things is the we have a few dozen students from Russia who are attending ASU as individuals. In terms of investments, we have very few investments that were tied to Russian enterprises, but those are being changed also. So we're ending all of those, and so our interactions had been limited, and whatever there were, Regent Manson, are being eliminated. The only other thing that I would say is that we are happy to report that some of the brains in the Javelin missiles involve code from ASU. So we're very excited about the destruction of the Russian war machine with code from ASU. So go Sun Devils.
Thank you very much. So can you comment a little bit about if we have, and you may have said this, but you were garbled for a few seconds there, any ASU students in Russia or Ukraine, the number of students that we have from Russia or Ukraine on ASU's campuses in the United States, and any other, if there are any other programs that are taking place in Russia outside of the Thunderbird office.
As far as we know, we don't have any staff in Russia. There was one person that was there that has subsequently left. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 people in Ukraine. They have left. I will mention that we are the technological partner to an emerging university in Kyiv called American University of Ukraine, and so that's just getting stood up through our relationship with Santana. It's not far enough along that we have any people or any assets. It's all an agreement and technological things that are in place. So that's going on. Between Russia and Ukraine, we have probably 100 students between the two on campus at ASU here in Arizona. There are a few dozen learners in ASU Prep Digital that are in Ukraine. Christine or other ASU folks, I think that's basically the summary of the things that we have going on. There are scholars that work among and between other people, but we're not familiar with. There's no funded projects. There's no funded activity. We do have a number of Russian expatriates on our faculty, but I think all of them are citizens now. And so it's whatever we have going on. It's low in numbers and not significant.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions from board members? Regent Penley.
Thank you very much, Chair Manson. President Crow, you mentioned the Thunderbird relationship, and one of the questions I want to ask all of the presidents is just about programmatic initiatives that you have in Russia and how you're addressing those programmatic initiatives, whether they be exchange agreements with universities, research projects, or the Thunderbird training program in Moscow. So that's a question to you, President Crow, but one I'd appreciate each of the other two presidents addressing as well. Thank you.
So we're terminating all those relationships. What we're doing with the Thunderbird project, Regent Penley, is that's really a branding arrangement and a branding agreement. So we're eliminating that. I don't think we've done it yet, but we're in the process of doing that as rapidly as possible. And then beyond that, there aren't any other projects that we're familiar with. There have been projects in the past, but there aren't any that we're familiar with now. Now we may find something or discover something, but we haven't found anything yet. And then in terms of academic partnerships that are going on, there's none that are funded that we know of, but there may be scholarly work that's going on. I might note that 3,000 Russian mathematicians just signed a letter against President Putin. Something on the order of 5,000 Russian academics just signed a letter against President Putin. These are very brave acts in a fascist state. And so there's a lot going on in the academic world. And so we don't want to cut ourselves off from the academics per se. We just don't want to offer any assistance to institutions that might be helpful to the Russian mission of reigniting European war.
Thank you. Regent Ridenour.
Thank you. See, I know this is a touchy issue, and we do not, or the universities do not necessarily have control over the foundations. They're governed by separate boards and all of that. But that is where the real difference would be made for the foundations to look at their investment portfolios and see what kind of Russian assets, which I assume would be small, are in those portfolios. So I don't know how you go about that, or have even talked to the foundations about reviewing their investment portfolios.
We've already had that conversation. It's a very small number. Morgan, I think you can comment on that.
Yes, it's about in our case about $2.3 million. So significantly less than 0.5% of the asset valuation. They are mostly in indexed assets. Russian financial assets would fit into both our emerging markets equity and debt allocations. What's happening is that the companies that develop these indices are actually in the process of dropping Russia from their indices, which will mean then that those assets will be sold because they're no longer part of the index to which an individual investment is tied. Most of ours are Morgan Stanley Capital Index, MSCI indexed investments. And Morgan Stanley has announced that effective Wednesday of this week that Russian assets will be dropped from those indices. And so that will pretty much take care of itself. The challenge at this point actually is liquidity of these assets. I don't know about today for Russia on the other side of the world, but last week their markets were closed, so one couldn't trade at all. Whether there would have been any liquidity if that had been the case is questionable, and so that'll have to be worked through. The assumption that several of the index providers have made is that the value of those assets currently may be zero. We're also looking through on our private equity investments and have not at this point found any exposure to Russian assets.
Thank you.
Perfect. Any additional questions from board members? Okay, I'd like to move along to President Robbins.
Thank you, Chair Manson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. We have very little to report. With regards to the foundation, and Lisa can fact check me on here, but I think when I spoke to JP, there's $8 million in an international growth fund, of which less than 30%, I think around 20% are in Russian assets. But as Morgan correctly pointed out, those are all frozen, and I'm not sure anybody would buy them anyway, and they're probably worthless. That's the extent to the foundation's investment. We have no programs really in Russia. I think there's one Russian national professor who was in Russia, but has told us that he's out of Russia. We had one student in Ukraine who made it safely, I think, to Poland. And then there's only one other distance cybersecurity student in Ukraine, but he's Ukrainian and probably cannot get out at this point. We did have preliminary discussions with Moscow State University about a program with them, but of course we've stopped those talks for the time being. And I think that's all I have to report.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I of course, I am in solidarity with Sheila Jackson Lee that we want Brittany Griner freed immediately so she can come back and play basketball for our Phoenix basketball team.
Yeah, that was bad timing at least.
Scheduling error.
Right. So let me ask just very quickly about students from Russia or Ukraine that you may have on campus at any of your schools in the States.
Yeah, I don't know how many. I should know that. Maybe someone else knows how many Russian and Ukrainian students. I think it's probably less than 100 that are on any of our campuses, primarily Tucson campus.
Okay. I would encourage the school to reach out to them. Obviously, this is a very unsettling time for all of them. So,
yeah, we did that last week in providing mental health help to any students from that region. Of course, we have two brothers from Lithuania and a point guard from Estonia, and they are very anxious that the next countries will be the Baltics. So we've been reaching out to certainly those international players on the basketball team, but all students and faculty members.
okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, we'll move along to NAU.
Good morning, everyone. At NAU, we have 2 students from Ukraine and 9 students from Russia. We have communicated with all of them individually and have made our resources available to them. We have, in terms of relationships, 3 of our faculty members have ongoing research projects with counterparts in Russia. Those projects have been either suspended or the money's refocused to other areas. We do have one academic agreement that is currently funding and facilitating some Russian language courses for our students. And so we are looking to eliminate those and make sure that we can pivot so that our students will have continuity, academic continuity in those courses. It's less than 20 of our students that are involved. We have exchange programs with about, 8 different universities in Russia, but all of them are either on hold or have been inactive over the last year. We have one faculty member that does consulting work for various entities in Russia, but at this point in time, he is put all of that work on hold. In terms of investments, the university does not have any direct investments. They're all through the state, through their investment pool, as you know. But in terms of our foundation, we only have about 40% of the total portfolio allocated to non-US stocks and bonds, and only 0.001% of that is related to Russia. So those would be, that tiny amount will be eliminated very shortly. And that is the report from NAU.
Perfect. Additional questions from board members? Okay. It seems as if we have moved fairly quickly on this, and I appreciate everybody's obvious support for removing ourselves from any connections that we have with the Russians without damaging perhaps the scholarly activities. So at this point, unless I have additional questions from any board members, I am going to make a motion.
Ridenauer had a question.
Regent Ridenauer, thank you. You're muted, Bill.
Rather than a negative, is there anything we can do in a positive nature? For instance, I think a couple of years ago, the refugees from Syria, ASU had some kind of program, and I could be wrong on this, that dealt with probably through the State Department, but is there anything positive we can do with this situation rather than a negative, which doesn't help much?
I'll just comment. So Regent Ridenauer, this is Michael. We have a partnership with a company called Chemonics. Chemonics was selected in a no-bid instantaneous contract by the US government to take $200 million for immediate deployment for Ukrainian refugees in at least the ones not going to Russia or Belarus. And so we're partnering with them with learning assets, educational assets, and other things. We're also just in the last 48 hours in contact with the Polish ambassador and others, because there a lot of the refugees are going into houses. They're being taken in by families. And so there's computers and other kinds of ways to engage. And so we're working with Chemonics as the USAID selected contractor to work on the refugee situation. And then our unit called E4H, Education for Humanity, which is led by a former senior UN official at ASU. They are also looking for every portal and every mechanism where we might be useful. Things are obviously, somewhat chaotic, and, staying in school or going to college or continuing college are not always the top thing on everyone's minds, but we're present and engaged.
Thank you.
Regent Shootman has a question.
Are there additional questions? Oh, I see Regent Shootman's hand.
Thank you very much. I think it's very good that we're thinking about the students that are here, particularly those from Ukraine. They might be thinking about seeking refugee status, those kinds of things, where we could actively at least put them in touch with people where that could be discussed. And I think ASU is doing that already by having a point of contact for the Ukrainian students to go and get that sort of counseling of what might be available to them. I think, Chair Manson, that's what you're looking for. I think we want to be able to at least talk about those things, as Regent Ridenour suggested, that are positive. And that
Correct.
is strong support for the students individually. If they need help with housing, even tuition, I think we could think about ways to support them through this unsettled period.
Thank you, Regent Schutman. I think those are very good points. Additional questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing none, I am going to make a motion that, notwithstanding policy 3-301 or any other board policy, and consistent with actions of the federal government to sanction the Russian Federation, the Arizona Board of Regents instruct the university presidents to direct that the investment policies of the universities exclude any investments in Russian assets. As part of this directive, the universities should exit existing investments as quickly as possible. The presidents are further instructed to work with university component units to modify their investment policies to include this same provision. The board executive director is instructed to exclude Russian assets from the board's retirement plans. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you very much. That concludes today's special board meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.